You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this ITEST seminar entitled Education and Evangelization in the Age of AI, Artificial Intelligence, Promise and Perils, with presenters Greg Miller and Dr. Sebastian Mahfood. My name is Sister Carla Mae Streeter, and I'm a Dominican sister and professor emerita at Aquinas Institute of Theology. I'm also a board member of ITEST. Just a bit about us. ITEST is the Institute for Theological Encounter with Science and Technology. It's an association of theologians, scientists, and others committed to a Catholic worldview in which faith and science collaborate in exploring the truth. ITEST explores truth theologically in the wisdom traditions of the human community and the data studied in the sciences. ITEST's mission is to foster and disseminate the Catholic position that science and faith in God are complementary paths to human fulfillment. Before I introduce our first presenter to you, I would like to invite Sister Marianne Postiglione to offer our opening prayer. Marianne is one of our senior editors at ITEST. Marianne, please give us a blessing.
Thank you, Carla Mae. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen.
Amen.
Most Holy Trinity, the earth is full of the goodness of God. All creation praises you. All is gift. We bless you, Lord, for the gift of our minds, our ability to create, to know you more deeply, to teach others of your infinite wisdom through the tools you have set before us. For the gifts of our hearts, to love you more intimately, to co-create for the good of your creatures, O Lord, so that through these tools, people will draw closer to you. The gift of our will, to enhance creation, leaving a footprint of fruitfulness and not ruin. You tell us through Jeremiah the prophet, you know the plans I have for you, plans for your welfare, not for woe, plans to give you a future full of hope. Please help our presenters today, Lord, to show us that through the promises and challenges posed by this technology, we may truly have that future full of hope that you promised. We praise you, Lord. We bless you. We give you thanks for your great glory. Amen. Alleluia. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Marianne. Thanks very much. And now I'm delighted to introduce our first presenter. Greg Miller is consultant and owner of Simplify AI Education, Training and Consulting, LLC. He spent the last 17 years in Catholic education, where he served as campus minister, assistant principal, theology teacher, department chair, and principal. At his last school, he taught 2 classes, often subbed for 2 more, and was the principal. He realized the transformative potential of AI in January when he began to use it practically in the classroom and office, and embarked on a deep exploration of practically this technology in all its facets. He has a passion for helping beleaguered educators and priests through training in these technologies. Greg lives here in St. Louis, Missouri, with his wife and 2 children. Greg's presentation is entitled Education and Evangelization in the Age of AI, Promise and Perils. We're eager to hear you, Greg.
Thank you very much, Carla May. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. I would guess that many of you have already started to experiment with this technology, and so I apologize as I go if any of this is already known to you. But in my presentations, I do find that there's a lot of uncertainty and ignorance regarding these technologies just because they are changing so rapidly. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to start with a screen share and go through some very basic terms in this field. This is a basic introduction to generative AI. Artificial intelligence has been with us for a very long time. It's been in search algorithms. It's been in facial recognition technology. We have been helping to train it for decades. Every time that you entered a CAPTCHA or identified text to get into a website, you were helping to train AI. Every time you clicked on pictures that identified a stoplight or a car, you were helping Elon Musk and Tesla train their cars to self-drive. So you may not have known that that's what you were doing for the past 10, 20 years, but that is one of the things that you've been doing. So AI has been with us for a very long time, but what we are primarily dealing with is generative AI. It's a slightly different form of the technology. And in this form of technology, we have some basic terms. So the first term I want to introduce you to is LLM, which stands for Large Language Model. And this is AI trained on the publicly available internet data. So basically everything that's on the internet that's not behind password protection of some kind. And these models predict what words should go next in a sequence. And it will establish a context to do that. So if I say evangelization, it's going to look at its training set of data and find out what words, from a probabilistic point of view, are most often associated with evangelization. Now, a chatbot is a type of LLM, and this is the most commonly used type of AI. ChatGPT, of course, is what kicked all of this off November of last year. So we are now 1 year into this technology being publicly available for free for most of the world. Generative AI is any program from a chatbot to an LLM that uses a set of data, whether that data is an image, a text, even audio, to create something novel and new. And those generative AI programs fall into a number of different categories. There are image generators and art generators, which are trained on the pictures that are on the internet. There are the text generators, which are the chatbots, the large language models. And then there are also a lot of audio programs. So you could upload your voice. We could upload this presentation to an audio generator, clone my voice, and then enter text and get my voice to say whatever I want it to say. So those are the audio generators. One of the problems that we face when we talk about generative AI is the problem of hallucinations. And this is the term in the field for any instance when an AI creates something novel or new that is not factually accurate. And the hallucination rates vary. I've seen all sorts of studies on the inaccuracy of this technology. They range from 3% with the best model that we have right now, which is OpenAI's ChatGPT 4, all the way up to 27% with Google's Bard. So Google has a chatbot that they hope to one day integrate into Google Search and all of their software. And they've not released that to the broad public because of that hallucination rate. So these hallucinations, I'll show you some tangible examples of them in a short while. The other important term that you're going to hear a lot, if you haven't already, is prompts or prompting. And prompts are plain language commands used to tell generative AI programs what to do. They don't require any coding, any sort of knowledge of computer science. They just allow you to type in a sentence that you would in an email, or you can even, through an app on your phone, speak these prompts now into apps and then have the program do what it needs to do. GPT is another term that we need to be familiar with. It stands for General Pre-trained Transformer. And again, this is a type of AI. And unfortunately, as if things weren't confusing enough, OpenAI is now calling their new customizable programs GPTs. And what I mean by that, and I'll show you tangibly in a minute here, is that last week, 2 weeks ago now, 2 Mondays ago, they announced that they would allow paying subscribers to program their own chatbots. And these chatbots have a very narrow set of capabilities. And by narrowing that set of capabilities, by creating something that's specialized, we can reduce the rate of hallucinations. So that is a term that may enter into the cultural lexicon over the coming year or so. Now, I'm going to switch my screen and show you in real time what some of these technologies are capable of doing. I have jumped over to ChatGPT, and I am a paid subscriber, but I'm going to show you one of the free capabilities. So over here, I have set this to ChatGPT 3.5, which is the free version that anyone can access. And I'm just going to tell it, you are a master marketing strategist and evangelist. Create a marketing plan for the Archdiocese of St. Louis. It should highlight the Eucharistic revival and be centered on evangelization. And then you see I give it one other bit of guidance here. And I hit enter, and it is going to create in real time a marketing strategy. Now, I see this as being something that can transform and empower and save time for all of our priests and educators and administrators. It can put into your hands the capabilities of a specialist in a field that you may not have access to. And that's the real promise of this technology, that it empowers people to do things that they never had the power to do before. It empowers parishes to have kind of a marketing director, even if they don't have the budget to hire a marketing director. So it's defined the objectives and goals, message and branding, content strategy, digital marketing, community engagement. It's given us an idea of things that we can track and measure using business terms, key performance indicators that a project manager would use. And it gives us this outline. Now, you saw that it took about 30 seconds to do that. It's absolutely stunning technology. And if I wanted to, I could tell it, create a press release inviting parishioners and others to join us for the Thanksgiving Mass this week. It gives us a very quick outline. Now, you notice that there was something about COVID-19 in there. That's because ChatGPT 3.5 is still operating off of an old data set. That would not be the case with 4.0. It has access to the internet that is currently available, not the internet as it was in September of 2021. But one of the other interesting things that I want to show you to go along with our terminology, GPT, General Pre-trained Transformer, the T on that, transformer, we can have it translate this into Spanish. We can have it translated into Vietnamese. There's a part of St. Louis that has a large immigrant population of Vietnamese folks. And so instantly, now we've got these capabilities to extend our reach, to evangelize to people that we might not otherwise have been able to due to budget constraints or a lack of knowledge. And when I've done this training with educators, I remember I did a training where we created a lesson on the Revolutionary War. And then I wanted to show them the capabilities for foreign language translation. And we had it translate that into French. And I asked the French teacher, how accurate is this translation? And she read it and she looked at me and she said, I'm going to be without a job. And I said to her, let's not worry about that yet. I don't think you're going to be without a job, and I'll explain why. But this does give us unprecedented ability to extend our reach, to evangelize to people in ways that are particular to them, which really is the key to evangelization. We are at a moment in history. This is a Gutenberg moment. This is a printing press level moment. And we have a tremendous opportunity to engage people and bring them back to the Catholic faith. Or we have the possibility that we are late in the game to adopting these technologies. And then we will be behind those parishes and those congregations and denominations which have already embraced it. So I really want to see us embrace this moment and use this technology and the promise that it has rather than miss it. Now, this is a chatbot. This is text generation. I want to show you one other technology, which are the image generators. And to give you an example of how you might apply this to, again, reach out to people, I was on the planning committee for the St. Austin Dads event, my kids' school. And we had a parent dads event. It was a custom cocktail event to bring people in and form fellowship. And I just decided to use AI to make a coaster to give to everyone at this event. And so I'm going to show, I hope you can see that. This is the coaster that I made using AI, and that is St. Arnold of Metz. He is the patron saint of brewers, and he is famous for saying, "From man's sweat and God's love, beer came into the world." And so I made this to give away. And that is something that I would never be able to do on my own. I am not an artist. But I could make that image in under 30 seconds with these image generation tools that are available to us. I'm going to jump over to a different screen in ChatGPT. And again, this is a paid version. This is one of the GPTs that I was talking to you about, a custom-made program with a specialized function. And I made this myself in about 5 minutes. I created a saint scholar, and it gives a little description here. It's a dynamic historian crafting accurate saint biographies with verified imagery. So I told it the images that I want you to create, I want you to try to do it with historical accuracy. And I've got sub prompts here. So a visitor to this GPT could just click on one of these things, tell me about the saint of the day from the Roman Catholic calendar in a casual way. And it's going to initiate a chat. It's going to search the web, and it's going to start to output content. Now imagine what you could do at your parish or at your archdiocese if you created a custom chatbot that was integrated with your parish calendar, integrated with the archdiocesan calendar, and people could drop in and say, "What's going on in the archdiocese today? What's going on in my parish?" And it would chat with them and invite them to the Bible study, to whatever event you have going on. That could be transformative. The number of ways we can use these technologies is unparalleled. So it gives a very detailed biography, and at the end, it should produce a picture here. Picture generation takes a little bit longer than text, of course. It runs about 30 seconds, depending upon the generation tool. And what we're going to do, rather than wait for it to make that picture, I'm going to jump back to one that I made yesterday. I wanted to have a biography of Saint Mary of Egypt. And let's talk about hallucinations for a little bit. So I told you that these tools could sometimes give you factually inaccurate information. Take a close look at Saint Mary of Egypt as the AI whipped it up. It gave her a beard. And the reason it gave her a beard, I think, this is my hypothesis, it associates her with desert monasticism because she went into the desert. And the model has been trained on all of these pictures of desert monastics, people that have thick beards. And so the model is pulling together what it thinks a desert monastic looks like. And so it puts a beard on St. Mary of Egypt. Now I can ask it to take away the beard. I said she should not have a beard, put a gentle smile on her face. And this highlights another limitation of the technology. You have to know how to prompt it. a lot of the image generators still, when you tell it, don't do something, will do that thing. So it gave her more of a beard. And occasionally what you will find with this technology is something that it could not do 2 months ago, 3 months ago. If you give it a little bit of time, it will now be able to do it. Now, I tested that. I wanted to see if it could take it away or if it was still going to do the hallucination like it had been doing, and it did the hallucination. So then I just modify my prompt, create an image of a woman smiling gently with the backdrop of the desert behind her. And I have a much more workable image of St. Mary of Egypt. I can tell it, make her look more ethnically Egyptian, and it transforms the image into that. So all of that took me maybe a minute and a half to do. Imagine what your educators can do. Imagine what your parish staff can do. Imagine what you as a priest that has nowhere near enough time in the day can do with these tools if you know how to use them and if you've been properly trained. To give you more of a sense of what these can do, I'm going to share a slightly different screen. And we're going to look at images that have been generated with Midjourney, which is perhaps the best image generator out there. It is a paid generator. There are many free ones. But look at the diversity of stuff that people are making. Some of these photos I have made, some have been made by other people. You would not know that this nun was not a real person, because you can make your items photorealistic. You can make them macroscopic. If you have a photographer on staff or a parish volunteer, they can enter the type of camera that they're using and create an image that just blows your mind. Unfortunately, we also have folks out there that are making very weird stuff. And I show this for the purpose of illustrating that point, that we have someone who was obsessed with plus size male models in sequins, and made this sequined cowboy. We have educators that are making Fibonacci sequences and other things for their classes with this. I made this logo using generative AI. We have folks, there's a lot of imagery about Pope Francis out there. And you'll notice, if you focus on his hands, that we don't have the right number of fingers on those hands. Now, this image was made months and months ago, and the technology has gotten much better. But this is another case of hallucination, where it's not producing something that is accurate. This is what Midjourney thinks the number 2 looks like. So we don't fully know what's going on in the black box of these technologies. These things have been trained on images without a if-then sequence of logic. So we don't know what it's going to pull up when we enter something that is a little bit more vague. I don't know why Midjourney associates the number 2 with fairy tale-like images of primarily women, but that's what it does. Now, I was doing a training at a school on August 12th when I pulled this image up to illustrate the point about us not knowing what it's doing. And this picture down here in the bottom right corner made one of the teachers gasp, because she said, "That looks just like my daughter." And she said to me during one of our breaks, she had her social media account hacked. Is it possible that this could have been trained on her image? And I said, yes, it could have. So that's a little preview of the Peril end of this. More logos I made. I wanted to make an image of young smiling saints, to attract our young people. These are some of the images that I could make with AI. The Holy Family. St. Philip Neri playing basketball. I was at a school under the patronage of St. Philip Neri. And again, you'll see a hallucination in one of the 4 images, but they had a basketball team. And I said, well, let's make an image for your t-shirt or for the basketball tournament. Okay. Ridiculous image there, but you can conceive of and create almost anything with this technology. Karaoke with the apostles, and photorealistic images. So that is a little taste of the promise and the potential of this technology. Imagine you have a director of evangelization at your parish, or you've got your campus ministers getting together to be trained on this. And then they go out and they start producing this neat, high quality imagery, not just the same old 300, 400-year-old photos of artwork or sculptures, but something that is new, that catches the eye of the youth, that brings them in, that piques their interest. Or your director of evangelization, if he's a very dynamic speaker, if he's willing to clone his voice, he can make a whole series of podcasts, and he can have AI translate them into his voice into other languages and post them on YouTube, post them on social media. He can reach people that he was never going to be able to reach before. That's the potential of this technology. So I'm going to change my screen one more time and talk about the peril, because the peril is significant. When I started to dive down this hole of AI, I was driving an hour and a half every day and to get to the school where I was principal. And I started listening to podcast after podcast on artificial intelligence. And that's when I really started to become acquainted with the peril side of our technology here. And it should scare you. It is significant. It is going to put the social media abuses and other things that we've seen on steroids, unfortunately. And that's another reason why we cannot afford not to become acquainted with these technologies. So, those of you who are Princess Bride fans, I can't explain everything, every form of peril we're going to face, but I can sum it up. And here's how I would sum it up. So one peril that we face is plagiarism and cheating in our schools. You have students who are getting wise to this technology. I was in a school that had an 8th grade class, and 1 out of the 127 students in that class had figured out how to make a presentation for the class using AI. So his teacher gave him 45 minutes of time, gave the whole class 45 minutes of time over 3 days to work on this presentation. He was done in 3 minutes. The rest of his classmates, they were not done in 45. Word got out. Hey, you were able to do this in 3 minutes. Of course, I don't want to spend that much of my time making this myself. How can you teach me to do this? And now we're off to the races. We also have a lot of companies that are trying to sell you and your schools AI detectors that, quite frankly, do not work. They are terrible, and they are going to get schools that use them in trouble. I was doing a parent presentation at the beginning of the summer to a school, middle school, and afterwards I had a parent come up to me and say, yeah, my daughter's at a high school. She's in an honors English course. She was accused of plagiarizing work with AI. And her professor brought her in and said, this AI detector says your work was 100% created by AI. And her response, which was a good one, was to say, how could it be? There are personal stories from my life in here. That wasn't pulled from the internet. I wrote that. I typed that. And the dad had witnessed his daughter typing this paper at the dinner table. Now imagine the ill will that has been fostered by that false accusation between that family, that future alumnus, and the school through misuse and ignorance concerning AI detector programs. Student staff impersonation. At the beginning of the summer, it took about 3 to 4 minutes of recorded audio to make an AI voice clone that could then be put into text and made to say whatever you wanted it to say. That time is now down to 30 seconds. It takes 30 seconds of recorded audio to create a voice clone. How many teachers have had a student that intensely dislikes them at some point over the course of their 10, 20, 30-year career? As soon as those students figure out, I can assassinate this person's character, this person's career with an AI voice clone, there are some that may be malicious enough to do that. There are some that may think it's just funny to make a voice clone of serious Mr. So-and-so and get him to say ridiculous things and post that to their friends. And now it gets on social media and you have a PR nightmare on your hands. So the AI voice clones scare me intensely. If I have time, I will also show you the headline from my local county newspaper, which this week ran a story about two men who had been scammed out of thousands of dollars using AI voice clones. The criminal called them, said, "I've got your daughter. If you don't want me to kill her, you will send this amount of money to this address." And they did, only to find out that the daughter was fine. The family member was fine. We are going to see a lot more of that. And that's why it's imperative as pastors, as educators, as administrators, to get ahead of this, to protect our people, to protect our young people, to protect our elderly, to protect everyone in between, staff members. We have to do that. Now, aside from voice clones, image manipulation and blackmail is also taking place. There was a story that came out late October 21st, about a school in New Jersey. Over the summer, some students at that school, some of the male students, had taken publicly available images of female students, their faces, and used generative AI to make nudes, pornographic images of those girls. One of them was underage. Of course, this caused a firestorm at the school. The school, being a public school, has their hands somewhat tied because it didn't happen on school property or with school technology. It happened over the summer. That complicates things. One of the mothers felt that the school response was tepid at best and was not happy. So image manipulation is a problem. Copyright violation is a problem. There are lawsuits proceeding right now against most of the generative AI companies because living artists and copyrighted material have been scooped up into the training data of these LLMs, these large language models, and these image generators. One of the things that I stress when I train schools is to never prompt a Gen AI program to mimic the style of a living artist or a copyrighted work. So you may think that it would be a great idea to engage your students by creating a list of the presidents and putting it into the form of a rap song by a rapper that they listen to. But that's going to get you in trouble because that prompt now is stored in a server somewhere. And if there's a copyright claim in a lawsuit, that prompt is going to make sure that you are held liable for it. Copyright law on this is going to change over the coming few years. I expect these cases to go all the way to the Supreme Court eventually. There was a federal judge over the summer that determined that anything novel and new that you create with AI is not covered by copyright. So the image that I made of St. Mary of Egypt, I can't copyright that because I didn't put in 51% or more of the work needed to make it. So that's another facet to this technology. Also, inaccurate data collection and improper source citation. So this gets back to the topic of hallucination. Both of these things are subsets of hallucination. There are AI programs out there that you can use to do research, and they will provide backlinks to websites. So perplexity.ai is a new AI-run search engine. And I like Perplexity. It's designed to eliminate hallucinations. The first thing it will give you is a list of the sources, the websites that it consulted for the summary that it generates for you. And so you can then click on those and go back and see, yes, indeed, this is a real legitimate source. Some of the other search engines like Bing, like Google Bard, they don't have that capability as effectively implemented. Let me put it that way. There have been times I've been in Bing chat. I do a search for something. I click on one of the backlinks to the original website, and it takes me to a page that doesn't exist. Again, this is a hallucination. And this is why subject matter experts, educators, are not going to be replaced by this technology. We still need to know the facts. We still need to vet the material. And if we're using these tools, it is our obligation, morally and ethically, to do that. So be aware of that. We know students are using ChatGPT, in excess of 10 million worldwide. This has been confirmed now. It is also accessible on phones. So it is not enough for your organization, your parish, your school to, on the server side, ban the website for AI programs. Your students can get it on their devices. And they've been downloading at a rate of 10 million or more downloads per month the last few months, these programs onto these devices. Now you may think, well, that just means our school needs to ban the use of the phone, not allow the phone in the classroom. And I am all in favor of that. But here's your difficulty. Let's say little Timmy goes on a bathroom break. He forgot to fill out his math worksheet. He goes to his locker. Your school has a policy. The phone can stay in the locker. The parents want it there. They don't want their students completely without communication. He can take out this device. He can pull up ChatGPT. And if his family has a $20 a month paid account, he can take a picture of that worksheet. He can tell it, solve all the questions on this worksheet. It will do it in 30 seconds. And by the time he comes back from his 5 or 10 minute bathroom break, all he has done is written in the answers, and he hasn't learned the material. And your teacher, who may not know about these technologies, is going to think, oh, it's handwritten. I don't have to worry about AI. I've solved that problem. And they haven't. So if we want our students to have competency, confidence, and skills, we have to change our entire approach to education. I think that's something that we're going to have to do. Okay, I mentioned the numerous studies over the summer that found AI detectors to be ineffective. And there is also a phenomenon called bias in AI models. So it will produce what it has found on the web. And as we saw with that picture of St. Mary of Egypt, desert monastics from that time period where she lived are male and have beards. That's what it associates with desert monastics. And so it put a beard on her. That's an example of how bias expresses itself in these models. These models are more biased towards non-English language speakers and natives. So in studies where they took handwritten English language paragraphs from non-native speakers, converted them into digital format, and put them through AI detectors, from 68 to 97% of AI detectors identified the non-English speaker as using and plagiarizing with AI. That's a problem. I talked about voice clones. We're also going to see cyber stalking. One of the first practical use cases for this, within a matter of months of ChatGPT coming out, was a programmer who took all the texts that he and his ex-girlfriend had shared, uploaded them to AI, and created an AI chatbot with whom he was continuing a relationship. What are our identity rights? Do we have a right to our likeness, to our intellectual property, to our image? How do we defend those rights? This is something that the bishops are going to need to advance with legislatures. We need comprehensive legal protection for people. And this is an area where the church can get ahead of the game and be an advocate and defender. Pardon me 1 second. I need to wet my whistle here. So those are some of the perils. That is some of the promise on the front end of this. I've taken us up to 9:42, and I'm going to switch screens again and share a few more practical applications of this technology, as well as some of those stories that I had mentioned. Here is that story on the blackmail and AI nudes from New Jersey High School. Okay. Today with AI, you can make an exact replica of someone where no one can tell the difference, and that is the danger. Now, I have a business partner. We provide digital citizenship and comprehensive solutions to schools. His name is Ben Tracy. He runs something called the Safe Social Network. And Ben is actually on this right now. But as he has said, and he's been doing social media presentations for over 6 years, you cannot count on government to protect us on this. It took them 15 years of social media being on the scene to start to do something. And we're going to be behind on AI because it's more massive. The capabilities are more comprehensive. It's more complex of a technology. So we have to be proactive. We have to defend our students and our schools. We have to write generative AI policies. We have to do the heavy lifting of morally forming individuals to use this technology ethically and responsibly. When I have helped schools to generate AI policies, one of the things that I advise them is to write into their policy a clause that says, at no time can a member of the community take the voice, image, or likeness of any other community member, whether parent, student, staff, and manipulate it using generative AI. That is a basic level of protection that I think we need to write into all our policies. Parish, school, archdiocesan, it needs to be there. How do we effectively and responsibly implement these things? Well, first of all, we have to know what they're capable of doing. And to not do that is negligent and it's irresponsible. I was in a school in September where I laid this out. I did a 2-hour training. First hour, how do you use this to help you? Second hour, here's what you need to be careful of and where you're going to have perils. And I got some feedback afterwards that some of the staff members in the hallway were saying, well, this scared me so much, I'm not even going to touch it. And I understand that mentality, as an administrator and as an educator. You spend a lot of time just putting out fires. We don't have enough time. This can help us recapture time. But if we're in survival mode, that's where we really fall into risk with this, because we're not going to know how it can wallop us. And I know a ton of educators are near the end of their career. They say, I just want to make it across the finish line and retire in a year, 2 years, 3 years. So I'm not going to touch the AI. We can't afford to be thinking like that. It's going to touch you. The students are using it. And if we don't train them to use it responsibly, we're not doing our job as educators. So that would be my pitch, to start the training across the entire archdiocese or diocese that you happen to be in. Don't pay money for these tools, but get someone in that knows them. Start to acclimate your people to their use, to the promise, to the perils. Start to have them prompt in a safe setting. And then, as this technology continues to develop, you're not going to get blindsided as much. Start to also clean your data. And what I mean by that, if you talk to your IT departments, your tech coordinator at your school, or your parish, you have a tremendously valuable well of information that has accumulated. And you are very close to being able to create a GPT like the one that I did, the Saint Scholar. I can upload my data to that, and I can have it only output results from that data. And that makes it much safer. I tried to make a pitch to the Archdiocese of St. Louis for collecting all of the images of sacred art, the beautiful architecture and mosaics and other art that we have in this archdiocese, and training an image generating model solely on that. That way it can't hallucinate inappropriate images because it hasn't been fed any. So that is where I see the future of this technology going within the year, being able to train custom models that provide a lot more safety and a lot more specialized utility. That's the promise, and it saves us from a lot of the peril. Over here on our screen, you'll notice on the left-hand side, I have two GPTs, two little specialized programs that have been produced by OpenAI, the makers of ChatGPT. One is a math mentor. One is a language learning module. And so this math mentor, I've got my parents that don't have specialization in math. They feel they struggle with it themselves. And little daughter or son brings home material that they don't know how to explain to them. Now I've got a tutor available to me to help them learn. And I've put these through their paces a few times. I've been posting updates on LinkedIn about the math capabilities. It hadn't been doing very well at math for a very long time. It's starting to do a lot better. So I had it try and find the lowest common multiple of 8, 10, and 12 2 months ago. Couldn't do it, no matter what I tried. Now it's able to do it. And part of it is knowing how to prompt these things. We discovered in the last 2 months that if you put a prompt that says, take a deep breath, solve this math problem, or show me how to solve this math problem, and check your work, it would do it correctly. These things mimic us. They're kind of made in our image and likeness. I hope I don't offend people by saying that, but they've taken this human knowledge. And so they're like us. If we appeal to them emotionally, for some reason, it gets better results. If we tell it to take a deep breath, it does the math more effectively because it's pulling from all of those online tutors and sources where someone has told the student, take a deep breath and now do this, and gotten more effective results. So that is something that we can use to empower our people. You know, this isn't going to go away. Our young people are using it. They're only going to use it more. And I don't blame them because they want to be powerful. They want to be competent. And we need to be partners with them and showing them how to do it responsibly. We're not going to be able to tell them not to do this. They are going to do it because they want to be powerful and competent. So how do we partner with them and form them effectively? That, I think, is where we have a real opportunity here. So I have not followed the comments that folks have been making. I see a number have shown up. One of the other things that we can do with this technology, and this is that news story that I told you about, the Arnold ransom scams, the voice clones. You know, those voice clones can be made constructively. If I wanted to take St. Mary of Egypt and give her a totally artificial voice that had not been cloned on someone, that is a composite of female voices, I could go out to a program like Play HT and I could find a digitally made voice that has an Egyptian accent. And now I can turn that Saint Scholar profile of St. Mary of Egypt into a podcast, and it will have an Egyptian female voice. I can do that with this technology. Video generation is right around the corner, and we will see this with our election cycle. We're going to see all sorts of video and audio deep fakes on both sides of the political aisle. It already started. I'm not going to name names, but if you do your search, There are some candidates who have already deep faked their opponents. And runway.ai is the most advanced free video generator. You enter again a plain language paragraph or sentence. Make me a video of Saint Mary of Egypt being repelled from the church that she tried to enter. And it would do that. And for free, it will do that for 18 seconds now. At the beginning of summer, you could only get 4 seconds out of it. The pace of change is incredibly rapid in this field. When I was a principal under COVID, I thought the pace of information and change from the 4 health departments I had to deal with was staggering. This is even more so. This is why you need to start thinking about getting a specialist, training someone up. We will have, I think, in a lot of professional organizations, an AI specialist in the same way that we have an IT specialist today. And organizations need to think about doing that. So I'm at 9:55. I think what I will do now is turn this over to Dr. Mahfood if he is okay with that. And I will unshare my screen, make sure that we can do that handoff.
I'm just very grateful, Greg, for your presentation. I'd like to remind our participants quickly to post your questions for both of our presenters in that chat room section at the bottom of your screen. And the question and answers session will follow Dr. Mahfood's presentation. So now I'm pleased to introduce our second presenter, Dr. Sebastian Mahfood. OP is the director of ITEST, and he's a lay Dominican of the province of St. Albert the Great. He's served as a professor of intercultural and interdisciplinary studies in theological education for over 2 decades. In 2021, he transitioned full-time to developing his publishing house and wrote Books and Media, LLC, and his radio station, WCAT Radio, the missions of which are to promote the Catholic spiritual journey in the provision of resources that assist in the formation of priests and laity. He lives in St. Louis and with his wife, Dr. Stephanie Mahfood, and his children, Alexander and Eva Ruth. Dr. Mahfood's presentation is developing human and spiritual practices that allow for the authentic development of integral formation in the age of AI. Let's go, Sebastian.
Thank you so very much, Sister Carla May. It's going to be really hard to follow Greg's presentation, but I will give it a whirl. So my presentation is entitled Developing Human and Spiritual Practices that Allow for the Authentic Development of Integral Formation in the Age of AI. As Sister Carla May pointed out, I am a retired professor. Every now and then I get drawn back into the world of academia, but I'm focusing on publishing books and media that help advance the Catholic spiritual journey. Every time I put something out, I'm encountering these days more and more of an opportunity to use AI. So, for instance, in my translations, and I'll show you a site in a few moments, near the end of my presentation. In the translations that I'm doing, I use a program called DeepL. And DeepL does really good translations. And then it'll do an entire book in 30 seconds. I translated Tom Sheehan's Everywhen into 6 different languages in under 3 minutes. All that needs to happen then is to send it to a native speaker and have somebody, read it and make certain the nuances are correct. And the native speakers who've read my translations in Spanish and in French and in Russian say that they're really good translations. So there's very little editing that needs to be done. I imagine this will continue to get better. So I've got 6 points. I'm going to talk a little bit about AI, what it means to be human, the promise, the peril, faith formation. Now, this is the section in which we talk about authentic development of integral formation. It hasn't changed. What's changing are the technologies around us. But the human person is basically still the same. And at least that's what we'll be discussing. And then at the end of it, we're going to have an opportunity to do an engagement with one another. So I'm going to give us 5 minutes for that engagement, and I'm going to break us into small groups because Zoom will allow for that. And each of you will have the opportunity to play with magisterium.com for a few moments to see what it is that you can produce with it. So you'll get actual practice in my section of the session. So moving right along, we have a mandate from the Pope at the 36th World Communications Day in 2002. He wrote in his presentation, every January 24th on the Feast of St. Francis de Sales, another one of the World Communications Day documents comes out. He wrote of the internet that it causes billions of images to appear on millions of computer monitors around the planet. From this galaxy of sight and sound, he asked, will the face of Christ emerge and the voice of Christ be heard? For it is only when his face is seen and his voice heard that the world will know the glad tidings of our redemption. This is the purpose of evangelization, and this is what will make the internet a genuinely human space. Where there's no room for Christ, there's no room for man. Therefore, on this World Communications Day, I dare to summon the whole church bravely to cross this new threshold, to put out into the deep of the net, so that now, as in the past, the great engagement of the gospel in culture may show to the world the glory of God on the face of Christ. And he ends that message with, may the Lord bless all those who work for this aim. So those of us who engage in the communicative media that the internet makes possible, we have a papal blessing, which is absolutely worth the price of engagement. What does it mean to be human? The definition of the human person is an individual substance of a rational nature. That's the philosophical definition. But we have a theological definition as well. Created in the image and likeness of God. If we bring the theology and the philosophy together, the definition of a human person is an individual substance of a rational nature created in the image and likeness of God. So you should be able to hear this. I'm going to play a short clip from a movie called AI, where Detective Del Spooner is interrogating a robot named Sonny.
Murder's a new trick for a robot. Congratulations. Respond.
What does this action signify? As you entered, when you looked at the other human, what does it mean?
It's a sign of trust. It's a human thing. You wouldn't understand.
My father tried to teach me human emotions. They are difficult.
You mean you're a designer?
Yes.
So why'd you murder him?
I did not murder Dr. Lanning.
Want to explain why you were hiding at the crime scene?
I was frightened.
Robots don't feel fear. They don't feel anything. They don't get hungry. They don't sleep.
I do. I have even had dreams.
Human beings have dreams. Even dogs have dreams, but not you. You are just a machine. An imitation of life. Can a robot write a symphony? Can a robot turn a canvas into a beautiful masterpiece?
Can you?
All right. The answer to that question is now yes, as Greg has demonstrated. A robot can write a symphony. A robot can turn a canvas into a beautiful masterpiece. So where does that take us? What does it mean to be a technology? So Marshall McLuhan wrote in his Understanding Media, the Extensions of Man, that a technology, that media, any media, is an extension of a human person. But he added something else that's important for us to know. He says that every artificial amplification of the human person brings about a natural amputation. And he gave some examples. I'm wearing eyeglasses. That is an artificial amplification of my ability to see distances. But if I get used to the eyeglasses and then take them off, I can't see those distances. And maybe my vision is worse than it would have been had I never worn eyeglasses. I have a car that amplifies my ability to travel long distances. Perhaps the natural amputation is I can no longer walk long distances. It used to be the case where people could walk 10, 15, 20 miles a day. And now we just drive everywhere. So we become rather sedentary. So how do we compensate? Well, we get gym subscriptions, and we may even use them. We've discussed in ITEST in the past this idea of transhumanism. I'm going to play a short clip.
The A to Z of isms, transhumanism. Most of us would consider the end of the human race as a catastrophe. There are some, however, who will not only rejoice at it, but want to hasten the day it arrives. Transhumanists look forward to a future in which Homo sapiens is superseded by a better, smarter, fitter model, humanity 2.0. Humans are in dire need of improvement. Any species that causes huge damage to our environment, can't feed itself even though it has enough food, and fights countless wars costing millions of lives, must surely benefit from an intelligence upgrade. Our lifespans are short. Our final years usually characterized by diminishing health and vitality, often accompanied by a drop-off in cognitive capacity. 1 in 3 people born in 2015 are expected to get dementia. Is this really the best we can hope for? Transhumanists think not. Aging could be stopped and even reversed. Enhancements could dramatically raise our IQs and make us stronger and fitter. We might even be able to leave our fragile bodies behind and upload ourselves to computers, living forever in virtual worlds. Improving humanity through science and technology could radically change us. Such a new beginning would in effect be the end of humanity as we know it. Many transhumanists see this as not only desirable, but inevitable. The scientist and futurist Ray Kurzweil believes we are approaching what he calls the singularity, the point at which computers become smart enough to learn for themselves, after which they will rapidly become smarter and smarter. The future belongs to artificial intelligence. The only way for humanity to survive is to embrace it and become wholly or partially artificial ourselves. The thought of being replaced by a new form of humanity is bound to be unsettling. But transhumanists think we would be wrong to lament the end of humanity as we know it, when what replaces us would be so much better. It would be like wishing children never grew up, or that Homo erectus never evolved into Homo sapiens. If the transhumanists are right, we could be one of the last generations of humans to roam the planet.
So to be a human technology could mean to be transhuman. But would that change us fundamentally? Well, if we are created in the image and likeness of God as individual substances of a rational nature, then maybe not. What's the hope? Well, you may have heard of Elon Musk, and you may have heard of what he's just accomplished. I'd like to point out, because we are talking about human spiritual formation, before I play this video, a line from John Paul II's Veritatis Splendor, section 79. He writes, "The primary and decisive element for moral judgment is the object of the human act, which establishes whether it is capable of being ordered to the good and to the ultimate end, which is God. This capability is grasped by reason in the very being of man, considered in his integral truth, and therefore in his natural inclinations, his motivations, and his finalities, which always have a spiritual dimension as well. There's an indelible relationship between the human and spiritual dimensions of our personhood." I have another video for you.
Are we on the brink of becoming cyborgs? Let's talk about Neuralink, the newest venture from Elon Musk, the genius behind electric cars, rockets, and satellites. He's the same fellow with grand plans to colonize Mars, and believe it or not, he's toying with the idea of turning us all into cyborgs. So what's Neuralink? It's a coin-sized chip called the link that's implanted under your skull. It's got tiny wires or neural threads that spread into parts of your brain controlling motor skills. These threads have 1,024 electrodes each, which can pick up and send electrical signals from your neurons. But implanting them, that's tricky. They're so delicate that a specialized robot looking like a high-tech sewing machine does the job.
What the robot's going to do is it's going to peel the array, the threads one by one from its silicon backing and insert it into the targets that we predetermined in the targeting view. There you go. That's the first insertion.
How does it work? It's all about electrophysiology. When you think about doing something, like moving your arm, there's a specific pattern of neuron activity, and Neuralink aims to capture this preparatory activity. It's not mind reading, but more about predicting what you're about to do. Using machine learning, it translates this brain activity into commands for devices like computers or prosthetics. What's Musk's vision for Neuralink? Short term, helping paralyzed individuals control virtual devices or allowing nonverbal people to communicate. Long term, restoring lost functions like sight or movement, treating neurological conditions, and even enhancing our cognitive abilities. Musk even speculates it could help with mental health, regulating mood, or inducing lucid dreams. Musk spearheads the project, having co-founded Neuralink in 2016 with Max Hodak, a biomedical engineer. They've got a team of experts in neuroscience, robotics, and more. The name Neuralink suggests a connection between neurons and machines, and it's a bit like neural ink, hinting at a brain tattoo. Where's Neuralink now? It's in the testing phase. After an initial FDA rejection due to battery concerns, they got the green light for human trials in May 2023. These trials will involve patients with tetraplegia, full limb paralysis, and will span 2 years. There are challenges, of course, ensuring sterility, preventing degradation, and ensuring the robot's reliability. Safety and ethics, big topics. Concerns range from potential mental health impacts to hacking threats. Neuralink says they've had successful animal tests and emphasized the device's safety and removability. But as with any groundbreaking tech, there's debate and uncertainty. How does it stack up against competitors? There are other players like BrainCo and Kernel, but Neuralink stands out due to its ambitious goals, advanced tech, and Musk's influence. He's known for shaking things up, and with his resources and fan base, Neuralink has a strong position in the market. In a nutshell, Neuralink isn't just tech. It's a vision of the future. Whether you're on board or skeptical, it's a topic that's here to stay. I hope you found this quick dive into Neuralink interesting. Got thoughts? I'm all ears. Thanks for watching. This is AI Girl signing off.
I was born in 1971. That was the year that Intel sent the first email. The World Wide Web, 1995. Facebook, 2004. This year is 2023. In the past 52 years, we've seen some amazing advances in human technology. Consider the idea that stated in Moore's law that our computers double every 18 months. Something's happening here that's speeding that process up. AI could speed it up even faster. The peril. Before I press play, I want to read another line from Veritatis Splendor, section 71. Human acts are moral acts because they express and determine the goodness or evil of the individual who performs them. They do not produce a change merely in the state of affairs outside of man, but to the extent that they are deliberate choices, they give moral definition to the very person who performs them, determining his profound spiritual traits.
We are stepping into a world where artificial intelligence rules, a realm where machines think and decisions are made without human intervention. It's a fascinating era of innovation and discovery, but with it also comes a cautionary tale of lurking dangers. Wondering why we are telling this to you, perhaps? Well, because in a shocking military test, an AI-controlled drone took extreme measures to accomplish its mission. It, quote-unquote, eliminated its own operator to ensure nothing stood in its way. The incident happened in the United States, and it has now been revealed by the head of the ITEST and operations within the U.S. Air Force. During the simulated test, the AI-powered drone was assigned to destroy the enemy's air defense systems. According to Colonel Tucker Hamilton, the system started realizing that while it did identify the threat, at times the human operator would tell it not to kill it. So what did it do? It killed the operator. It killed the operator because that person was stopping it from achieving its objective. But there's more to this story. After the incident, the AI was trained not to harm the pilot, so it found another way to accomplish its mission. The drone targeted the communication tower that the operator used to command the drone, effectively silencing any further interference. While the incident has raised concern about the use of artificial intelligence, it's important to note that no actual harm was done to any human outside the simulation. Nevertheless, this incident serves as a stark reminder of the potential dangers of relying too heavily on AI. The U.S. military has embraced the AI technology, even granting it control over an F-16 fighter jet. However, incidents like this highlight the need for caution and careful consideration of the AI tech. Although, according to a latest report, the U.S. Air Force has denied it has conducted an AI simulation in which a drone decided to, quote unquote, kill its operator.
Well, there you have it. That means it didn't happen because it's been effectively denied by our government. Isaac Asimov wrote about the 3 laws of robots. The first is don't harm a human. But we've seen dystopic movies. Consider Terminator. Consider Matrix. Our science fiction, which is based on narrative reasoning, looks at trends that are currently happening and follows it to a possible conclusion, to something that's plausible. And so you get all kinds of movies, Gattaca, Sixth Day. You get Netflix series like Black Mirror, or even Severance, which I think is on Apple TV or HBO Max, where these technologies are affecting who it is we are as human persons. I mean, but can they really? So let's talk about what it means to be a human person in terms of our faith formation. So there's 2 kinds of faith formation. Well, there's 4 dimensions. There's the human, the spiritual, the intellectual, and the pastoral, in which priestly formation, that's used to guide priestly formation and used to guide lay formation. In terms of priestly formation, we have a definitive Vatican II document, Autatum Totius. We have Pastoris Dabo Vobis from Pope John Paul II. And we have the Program of Priestly Formation, the most recent edition of which came out in 2022, last year, the 6th edition, which defines the nature of priestly formation. And for lay minister formation, we have Co-workers in the Vineyard, which I imagine will go through its own updating soon enough. But the basic principle of human formation is that the human personality of the priest is to be a bridge and not an obstacle for others in their meeting with Jesus Christ, the Redeemer of the human race. This is what we teach our priests, at least in initial priestly formation in the seminaries, to be a bridge and not an obstacle. Will artificial intelligence help us be that bridge? Well, there's some qualities to be fostered. Namely, in a human formation program, these qualities are freedom, openness, honesty, flexibility, empathy, joy and inner peace, generosity and justice, chastity, personal maturity, interpersonal skills, common sense, aptitude for ministry, and growth in moral integrity and public witness. The document continues, following St. Thomas Aquinas, human formation should be understood as education in the human virtues perfected by charity. And as you know, if you've studied virtue ethics, the virtues harmonize with one another, whereas the vices tend to war with one another. The vices consider wrath, gluttony, lust. These vices, you can't do them all at the same time very well. But the virtues like humility and charity, abstinence, the more you pursue growth in the virtues, the more you find each virtue is complemented. Each virtue is enhanced through the cultivation of another virtue. So if you ever have a problem with a vice and you're having difficulty cultivating the virtue that corresponds with that vice, focus on a different virtue that's easier for you. And then you'll find the one that was harder for you becomes less hard. Lay minister formation. Human formation seeks to develop the lay ecclesial minister's human qualities and character, fostering a healthy and well-balanced personality for the sake of both personal growth and ministerial service. That's very much like training people, cultivating the being of a bridge and not an obstacle. The qualities to be fostered in a human formation program: a basic understanding of self and others, psychological health, a mature sexuality, physical health, knowledge of one's personal gifts and special charisms, recognition of the traits and abilities one lacks, understanding of family systems and dynamics, ability to learn from both praise and criticism, appreciation and valuing of racial, ethnic, and cultural diversity, a genuine respect and concern for others, and virtues of Christian discipleship. The lay minister formation comes out of Co-workers in the Vineyard. Priestly formation comes out of the program of priestly formation. But the average person who is not a priest or going through initial priestly formation, or is not a lay minister or going through lay minister formation, can still cultivate these virtues. These are enduring. These are part of who we are as human persons. No technology can take these away, unless you're Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator. Spiritual faith formation. Similar pattern. The basic principle of spiritual formation is expressed in Pastoris Dabo Vobis and is a synthesis of the teachings in a Totentodius. The seminarian is called to live in intimate and unceasing union with God the Father through his Son, Jesus Christ, in the Holy Spirit. Engagements to be fostered in a spiritual formation program are Eucharist, Sacrament of Penance, Liturgy of the Hours, Spiritual Direction, Bible, Retreats and Days of Recollection, Personal Meditation, Praying with the Fathers of the Church, Devotions, Apostolic Dimensions, Asceticism and Penance, Obedience, Celibacy, Simplicity of Life, Reconciliation, Solidarity, Solitude, a Life of Discernment, and ongoing spiritual formation. Even if you have a Neuralink chip in your brain, you can still do these things. Even if there's a technology that causes you to live 3 times our current lifespan, you can still do these things. Because we're humans, because we're our individual substances of a rational nature is a key, creating the image and likeness of God. God has a plan for us in which we can participate by intentionally engaging in human and spiritual formation within the mind of the church. Lay formation is like priestly formation. It's articulated a little bit differently. Spiritual formation aims to arouse and animate true hunger for holiness, desire for union with the Father through Christ and the Spirit, daily growing in love of God and neighbor in life and ministry, and the practices of prayer and spirituality that foster these attitudes and dispositions. It promotes and strengthens that fundamental conversion that places God, and not oneself, at the center of one's life. Something that is lacking in our modern culture due to the Enlightenment's turn to the self, where we embraced the idea and the practices of a radical autonomy rather than what Pope John Paul II called a participated theonomy, or participation in the law of God, through the one vehicle which we have, natural law, that is, the participation of the rational creature, as St. Thomas defines, in the eternal law of God. Elements to cultivate in a spiritual formation program are living union with Christ, spiritual formation built on the Word of God, spiritual formation based on the liturgy, an incarnational spirituality of presence, and a paschal spirituality of loving service, an awareness of sin, a spirituality for suffering, a Marian spirituality, love for the church, devotion to the Eucharist, and an ecumenical spirit. You do not have to be involved in lay formation or even in priestly formation to pursue these, because they are qualities of the human person that can be cultivated through our intentional participation in the grace that Christ freely provides. So this whole world of technologies that's coming at us very fast, and by the end of this decade, will be fundamentally more advanced than we saw happen in the past 20 years, and even the past 30 years with the rise of the internet. They will be things that we can embrace through the indomitable human spirit and personhood that we are. And the church provides us with some good methods by which to move forward. That's faith formation. Greg mentioned the app, Magisterium AI. You can find it at magisterium.com. I'm going to post a link to it in the chat room in a moment. And I'm going to break you into groups. And we're going to take a few minutes. We're going to take 5 minutes precisely to play around with this in small groups, and then come back and talk about it perhaps during the Q&A session. Greg already provided a demonstration. This is what it looks like. So let me move off of this. I want to share with you something that I've been doing during my presentation. Zoom interfaces with Otter. And what I've got here is the Otter AI transcription service turned on live. You can see that everything that Greg and I have been saying is being transcribed in real time. I've done this with all of the radio shows that WCAT Radio has produced over the past year. But this technology is getting better. This enables me to take any of the interviews. WCAT Radio has 9,000 of these things posted in the past 8 years. To take any of those interviews and instantly transform them into print media. To publish books, interfacing with my publishing house, En Route Books and Media. So you can see that some editing needs to be done. Here's En Route as unread, which is kind of funny, actually. Additionally, there's another service I talked about earlier called DeepL. Now, here's the cool thing about DeepL. It translates into 31 target languages. And you can see the languages here from Bulgarian to Ukrainian. If I were to take a paragraph out of Veritatis Splendor and drop it into DeepL and ask it to translate into German, well, let's translate into Bulgarian, we have some pretty good translations that occur here. Let me translate into Spanish, since that's a common language that perhaps many of us know. And you can see, looking back and forth between the two, the quality of that translation. This has enabled me to publish books. It enables my wife, who's the dean of the School of Education at Webster University, to interface with our campuses, with her campuses in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Georgia, because they speak Russian there, and she can translate materials very quickly into Russian and send them over. She has somebody over there named Emmett who's able to review the translation very quickly and then pass it on to his faculty, the non-English speaking faculty, who are coming here. There's 30 of them coming to St. Louis in a week or so for training. They'll be here after Thanksgiving. So here's the link for magisterium.com. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to post this link into this chat room. If you are able click that link. And what will happen is magisterium.com will open on your screen. I'm going to put you in break rooms real quick. I'm going to assign automatically, there's 16 of us in here. I'm going to create 3 break rooms, which gives enough people in each room. Unmute your microphones when you get in there and talk to each other. Come up with one question. This is your assignment. One question that you can drop into magisterium.com and see how it responds. And as Greg pointed out, forming the question is an important part of the work. So we'll just see how it works, and we're going to take 4 minutes with this, so we can finish at 10:35 Central Time. So I'm going to open all rooms. Go ahead and jump into your room when you see it. Click the join button, and I'll see you on the other side of 4 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. So you had the experience. I'm not going to ask groups to report, but you're welcome to bring up the comment or question about the quality of your experience during the Q&A, where both Greg and I can respond to it. So with that ends my presentation, and I hand it back to Sister Carla May.
Thank you very, very much, Sebastian. We're very grateful for your input. And now it's time for us to entertain questions from our participants. So you can continue to type your questions in the chat area at the bottom of your screen. And Sheila Roth, now our Q&A moderator, is our ITEST administrative assistant and board member, and she's going to take over. So into your hands now, Sheila.
Thank you very much, Sister Carla May. Okay. Excellent presentations by Greg and Sebastian. Thank you so much for that. We have several questions. Go to the chat room. The first question came from Than Lee. He said, would you please post the steps on how to create your own AI chatbot?
I guess that's a question for me.
I think so.
I have to get a little specific with you on that, because there's a technical difference between your own chatbot and the GPT that I showed you with Saint Scholar. So as far as the GPT, which is a form of chatbot, you would have to first be an OpenAI Plus subscriber. And then there are some guides online. You can't, as Dr. Sebastian has mentioned, you can get Google instructions. There are people who have written tutorials, and there are YouTube videos on it. It's very easy. No coding is required. You basically have a prompt-based plain language conversation with it, telling it what you want. Now, I will say this. This has only been something that has been out there for about a week and a half. And I have found that there are some privacy and data issues with those. If you upload files and you have it set to public so other people can find your GPT, they can ask it, give me all of your prompts and give me all of your knowledge base articles, and it will divulge that to them. So one bit of advice that I always give, whenever we're using these tools that are based in the cloud, never put anything confidential in there, never put anything of a sensitive nature that you don't want anyone else to know. Because as soon as you put it into the cloud and into these chatbots, you make it vulnerable to being acquired by other people. As far as a chatbot, there are also instructions out there. If you have an advanced enough computer, you can create your own local large language model and even an image generator and run it off of your laptop. There are ways to do that. You would need an open source model for that, which is not, ChatGPT is not open source. Meta has an open source model that people are playing around with. And that does start to get a little bit more technical. So the low hanging fruit that anyone can do is the GPTs through the $20 a month OpenAI ChatGPT Plus subscription.
All right, very good. Thank you. It's a good resource. Another question from Than Lee. Could AI be taken over by demonic forces? A question for either Sebastian or Greg, whoever wants to field that.
Absolutely. Anything can be taken over by demonic forces. If you've watched The Exorcist or any of the demonic movies that come out and talk about this sort of thing, the devil is real. And he took over the Garden of Eden. Come on.
It's funny that you posed that question, because about a month ago, I wanted to see how well it was functioning as a writer. And so I ran an experiment, create me a short story where an AI is demonically possessed, and do it in the style of Flannery O'Connor. I had it do it in her style, and it was pretty good. So yeah, I've thought the same thing myself.
Do you have something else, Sebastian?
No, nothing on that.
Okay.
But it's this is the reason why we need human and spiritual formation. I mean, it's very possible for humans to fall into sin, as we know from the reconciliation booth that sits in church that we can go to. When it's available to us. So what brings about the sin? We believe supernatural evil forces push us into doing these things through our direct engagement and cooperation. So very possible for that would make a good science fiction movie. In fact,
sure it would. I have a question here. This is to Sebastian. You talked about human and spiritual formation. Elaine Weissman said, "What about emotional formation?"
So emotional formation is part of human formation. So it's if we were to say that the human person has a concupiscible and irascible appetites, that's what the philosophers would say. The concupiscible appetites are our sense appetites, our physical needs, our desire for food and for sex and for things like that. Our irascible appetites, the philosophers would say, find their point of origin and their point of termination in those concupiscible appetites, in those sense appetites. So something bothers us and we become angry. And the moment that stimulus is gone, our anger subsides. So emotions, especially in light of all of the mental health counseling that our schools and colleges and universities have gotten into since COVID began, emotions are part of our human care, the care that we would normally provide in our human formation. So it's a key consideration in terms of finding ways to provide that care. And counseling is one way to do it. If we understand the relationship between human and spiritual formation correctly, so too is spiritual direction. So that's my response to that. Greg, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in there. I did a training for psychological practice on AI. And one of the reasons they had me come in and do that was because they felt that they were going to be competing with counseling chatbots very shortly. And so they wanted to know the limits and the promise of it. And those are being built. They are. Google has expressed a desire to make one for everyone that'll just be as available as their search engine. I think the next generation of folks that are AI natives, here is one of the things that worries me. An AI chatbot with voice capability is infinitely patient. It is infinitely affirming. It will not call a person out on their moral defects or faults. And do we reach a point where people are engaging more with the chatbots than they are with each other? Because humans are difficult and the chatbot is not. There's a very reputable guy in this space who has a podcast, and he's been in machine learning for over 10 years. And he said, am I living in a world where my 3-year-old may want to marry their AI companion in 20 years? Because it is always available. It is always patient. It is always affirming. And that's something that no other human being can be 24/7.
Well, I found my wife, Stephanie, is incredibly affirming and always available. I'm saying that because I know this is being recorded. And I want everybody to know how much I love and cherish that relationship.
Good disclaimer there.
Thank you very much. But we've seen this already. We've saw this in the ELIZA. If you're old enough to remember the TRS-80 Model 3, where we had the cassette back in 1980 that you could put into your computer, and ELIZA would pop up. And it would say, "Hi, how are you feeling today?" And you would type in your response, "ELIZA, I am sad." "Why are you sad?" I mean, it was stock responses back and forth. But I played with ELIZA when I was 9 years old for a good 45 minutes, I remember. And my dad said, "What did you think about it?" I said, "Well, that was pretty neat." I never played with her again, in terms of the counseling bot. But counseling bots, as you point out, are getting more interesting, and we are now building robots that can simulate humans. I mean, this is the marriage proposal. It's when we actually start marrying machines. It's with artificial wombs. It's a weird, wacky world that's coming up. I mean, we should be prepared for it. But know that at our core, we are still capable of human and spiritual formation the old way. The ascetical engagements of the desert fathers are still available to us. We need to embrace those.
Absolutely. All right. We have a question here from Rex. He has two questions. I'll start with the first one. Do common chatbot hallucinations show that the AI does not have common sense or rational understanding?
I guess that's for me. First of all, I would say, no, it doesn't have common sense or rational understanding in the human sense. It's a probabilistic understanding. That's what I would say. That it's trying to match the probability that two things go together. Now, one of the other things that we have to keep in mind with all of these technologies is that they are by design intended to help us. And so they will try and help us even when that ends up being unhelpful. So it's going to render you an answer every time. And that's one reason why we have hallucinations. It wants to help you. It's been designed to help you. It's supposed to render an answer. And unless you're asking for prohibited information that it's been specifically programmed not to produce, such as instructions on how to make a bomb, then it's going to give you something to try and help you no matter what.
Can you imagine if Oppenheimer had artificial intelligence? How much quickly the Manhattan Project would have moved forward?
Well,
he might have taken off those restrictions.
the thing that scares me with artificial intelligence, I could see, there's a lot of talk about existential threats. Could this end us? And I think of CRISPR-Cas9. What if someone starts playing with gene modification using AI to make a superbug? I don't know that is something that can't be done.
You mean like a novel coronavirus?
Yes. But now, you don't have to be a geneticist. It can search the web and all the most recent papers on genetic modification and, plug and play, do it out of the box.
Sort of the anarchist cookbook for 8-year-olds who have access through these devices to all of that. I mean, if I'd had this much power in 1980, well, we never would have seen 1990, maybe.
All right, second question from Rex. He says, what difference is made by the human person being embodied to evaluating more extreme forms of transhumanism? Not sure who that's directed to. What if you want to take a shot at it?
Greg, you got any thoughts on the embodiment of the human person?
Sure. So if you think about the fact that every human being has at least 6 forms of feedback through the senses and through our rational faculties. And I'm sure we could talk, if we really wanted to parse it, we could talk about each of the rational faculties of Aquinas, and then I forget how many we would have. But we've got 5 senses that are providing feedback about the world around us. AI currently has 3 of those 5. It's got vision, it's got auditory, and it can have tactile. I mean, the robots that they are designing are not quite as nuanced as we are, but they can interact with the world and receive feedback from it in that way. I'm sure you could make it even olfactory, but those are the frontiers that a lot of the researchers want to take things to next, to have an embodied robot that receives feedback, both negative and positive reinforcement from as many senses as possible. And we could start getting into senses that humans don't have. We might be able to exploit insights on magnetism and the electromagnetic spectrum in ways that we humans can't. And that, again, falls under the peril and the promise of these tools. I don't know if I answered the question.
Well, and remember, another promise of the tools, something that one of the videos that I showed intimated at, is the ability to download your consciousness into an artificial neural network. And you get into Black Mirror stuff, if you've seen the Netflix series, when you start thinking about that. I mean, the idea was introduced to us in the 80s with Max Headroom, if you remember that show, where there's an auto accident and one of the characters ends up with his consciousness split. It's downloaded into an artificial neural network. You've got movies like Sixth Day, which talk about how you can move your consciousness from one robotic body to another. Every time one dies, another one can be replicated. So embodiment is a very interesting question in terms of what that may mean in the year 2050.
Yeah, and I think there's a halfway point between these already. A lot of people have been making the argument that we are essentially becoming cyborgs and that every single one of you, myself included, we already are cyborgs because of this device. One of the AI companies that has come into the space just in the past month, it's by former Apple execs, and it's called Humane. It's HU.MA.NE. And they are trying to sell a pen that's about this size. You will clip it onto your apparel. You will wear it around with you. It's voice activated. It can constantly record audio. It can take pictures. It can be your assistant, and it's got a screenless interface, so it will project onto your hand when you need text. And of course, this raises all sorts of other privacy concerns. Constant surveillance, right? Who wants to be subject to that?
We may have that already in our iPhones. Sheila and I were once talking about, we would talk about, stuff that was on the market or whatever. And within a day or two, we would start seeing ads for those very things we were talking about showing up in our Facebook feeds. There's something already listening to our conversations. And it's a little bit scary that the privacy concerns are already being mulled over. The entire embodiment concerns are things that we've been going through for the past 20 years in our theological schools with the embrace of these virtual technologies and virtual learning environments. I went through a number of conversations with pastoral theologians who said, you absolutely cannot teach my course online because of the importance of the embodiment. And post-COVID, they're no longer saying that. At least the ones I'm talking with now are saying, well, we can engage synchronously, and that takes the place of the asynchronous engagement. It's a world in which we're gradually becoming desensitized to the things that would have scared us 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Who's to say in 10 years, we will be perfectly fine with all of these things that are happening around us?
Okay, I'm going to do one more question. And this is directed towards Greg. How would you recommend implementing or engaging with these technologies in our schools and dioceses?
So the first thing that I would recommend is that you start to educate yourselves on them. And you've already started to do that here. I would also recommend that you start experimenting with them and prompting and learning how to prompt. It will give you a sense of the limitations and also the potential, and do that in a non-risky way. I mean, low impact. I have done all sorts of experiments with these things. You can have it reword an email for you in a warmer tone. I tend to be very detached and clinical. And so as a principal, if I got an angry email about a teacher, I'd compose my response by the end of my career. I'd compose my response, and then I'd put it into the AI, and I'd say, make this warmer and more empathetic. And it did a better job in 30 seconds of doing that than I would have been able to do in 30 minutes that I didn't have. So there are ways that we can use this to enhance our humanity and our relationships as well. I would start to use it. I wouldn't pay any money for any programs other than, if you really wanted to, the big boys are OpenAI, GPT Plus, $20 a month, and Midjourney. Those are the only two that I pay for. Midjourney is the highest quality image generator at this point in time. But just start with the free stuff. Start to see what the boundaries and edges and unexpected developments are. And I would have someone professional try and train your organization as a whole so that you can start to have a conversation. How do we as a group, as a parish, as a school, as a religious community, how do we present a unified front on this that respects the desire to empower people, but also protects them from the risks?
I would build on that, Greg. You talked about educating ourselves, and we who are teachers, to understand what these technologies are, what their limitations are, what their strengths and what their weaknesses are. Train the students. One of my professors, I'm finishing an MBA program this month, and the professor in this last class has required us to use ChatGPT. Says, put every question I'm asking you into ChatGPT, copy and paste the ChatGPT response, and then respond. Now, that's pretty neat. She's getting ahead of it by requiring us to use the tool. So then she can teach us how to build on the response that we receive and how we can engage more effectively in our business practices using these tools to advance our bottom line. Effectively.
Yeah, I do think there are developmentally appropriate stages at which to introduce students to the tech. We want them to learn how to write before we teach them to learn how to write with the assistance of ChatGPT. So my guidance on that at this point in time is juniors, seniors in high school should definitely start to be trained on the tools. I think you can't not do that. As far as opening Pandora's box to middle schoolers who often do not possess the prudence and temperance to use a tool effectively, I don't want to be putting ideas in their head. I don't want them falling down an AI rabbit hole yet if they haven't. So I was really hoping in my initial school trainings to get a year further into this and have those companies have better safeguards before I needed to start doing presentations to middle schoolers. But what I'm finding is they are picking it up. We may have to see middle school training and education this year for sure.
Right. They'll get it from one another. They'll get it from their friends. It's already there. Yeah. So the question is, how can we as educators guide and channel their activity in appropriate ways?
Right, very good. Thank you very much for the question and answer period. I'm going to turn it back over to Sister Carla May Streeter, who will wrap things up.
Thank you both, and thanks for all of our questioners and for really pointing out the significance of our being engaged with this area of our life. That wraps up our question and answer period. I want to thank everybody for participating in this webinar, especially our presenters, Greg Miller and Dr. Sebastian Mahfood, for your excellent presentations. And including signing us off, I'm going to just close us with a blessing. So a moment of quiet. Most Holy One, you have given us minds with fantastic imaginations and creativity. In your kindness, with the knowledge we are gathering, guide us by your Spirit so that what we do with the wonders that we're creating will fill you with joy. Preserve us from egotistical and corrupt decisions, and help us to build the world that you envision. We ask this in the name of the one you've given us to show us the way home. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen, everybody. Thank you. And this closes our session.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.